Welcome to the University of Nottingham and to the Department of Theology and Religious Studies, and another in our series on sacred calendars, how various religious groups have organised time to express the mysteries they believe in. And with me today I have Professor Agata Bielik-Robson, who's the Professor of Jewish Studies here in the university, and she is going to talk about Pesach, Passover, Pascha, various names. Please tell us something about this moment in the sacred calendar of Judaism.
Well, actually, this is the most important moment in the sacred calendar of Judaism. This is the greatest and the most important holiday, which has the longest history of all Jewish holidays, and is actually the most interesting one, because its meaning has been evolving and changing throughout the ages, and actually sort of acquired three forms. And all these three forms are now, actually they've been sort of conflated into a one form in sort of few centuries before the Christ. But they sort of like a three parts of the one holiday that sort of acquired eventually a one integral form, one integral shape. So it is the first holiday, which happens traditionally in spring on the eve. It begins on the eve of the 14th day of the month called Nisan. And originally, at the sort of Israel's earliest years, when Israel was still a shepherd nation, it was basically a festivity of spring, and consisted of the sort of a holiday of a sacrificial lamb. And probably the word Pesach, there was a big sort of debate about what it really means, but the word Pesach comes basically from the name of the skipper, that is the skipping lamb, who was sacrificed during the holiday. So it was like a sort of shepherd's thanksgiving to the God who takes care of the heads. And then when Israel became more agricultural and settled down for a moment, Pesach became a kind of a festivity of spring and of the crops. And it was called the holiday of the unleavened bread. That is the matzah, and which is actually eaten during the Pesach till nowadays. And only during the reign of the king Josiah, that is the kingdom of Judah, just a few decades before the first destruction of the first temple, actually the Pesach acquired a meaning which it has till today. That is the holiday which commemorates the liberation from Egypt. That is Exodus from Egypt. And this is a very interesting turn of events, because in a way this is a very significant transformation of the meaning of holiday from a kind of a very typical, almost mythological type of festivity, which is bound with the change of seasons and with the cult of nature and the cult of natural life, to something completely else. A ceremony which commemorates a historical event, where actually history comes for the first into the sacred picture. The history written with capital H. I mean, history not just being a kind of a natural cycle, something that is run according to the change of seasons, but something that is purely human and in a way takes man, a human being, out of the bondage of nature and leads him into the wilderness or the desert of the open space, vast open space, where actually human being for the first time can establish its own historical way of life. So this transformation of the holiday from the kind of a natural, almost pagan ritual festivity of spring into a completely new type of holiday commemorating historical event marks one of the sort of milestones in the history of Jewish religion, but I would also say the history of mankind, because in a way we are dealing with the emergence of proper notion of history for the first time.
Oh yes, and of course the notion of God acting in history is absolutely at the core.
Yes, God not only acting in history, but in a way laying foundation for the history, because the moment of the liberation from Egypt, well, is understood on many levels, right? Literally, it means really leading the Israel out of the house of bondage, right? Leading the Israel out of the house of bondage when there were slaves into the vast open land of freedom. When Israel can, for the first time, become a nation ruled exclusively according to the divine rule, the law that's been given by God Himself. But it also has symbolic meanings. Very quickly, this holiday acquired almost a mystical interpretation of actually God of Exodus leading His people out of the bondage of natural law. That is, leading His people out of the slavery to the gods of nature, to the pagan rhythm of nature, to all these things that actually the old tribes of Israel were believing in.
The slavery of determinism.
Slavery of determinism, slavery to natural rhythm, slavery to, what the Greeks affirmatively call, the great cycle of being. I mean, the God of Exodus is actually is a kind of this alien God or a strange God who has the capacity to take out His chosen people out of the rule of fate, out of the rule of nature, out of this dark determinism that actually condemns people, condemns mankind to be enslaved to this hopeless cycle of becoming and perishing, of the birth and decay. Something else is promised, something more, something much more exciting. And that is obviously the symbol of Canaan, the promised land. And this is also the time when the word Pesach changes its meaning and is now associated with the verb to save, to liberate, to redeem, and also Passover. And Passover meaning, and this is actually refers to what the God did before He actually led out Jewish people of Egypt. That is, He skipped or passed over the Jewish houses when He murdered Egyptian firstborns. It is not very nice, but actually to actually commemorate that. But maybe I'll just mention that during the Seder, which is the Passover feast, we shed few drops of the Seder wine for the sake of those who were killed in Egypt, so the Jews can safely get out.
All right, okay. Because I remember once I was teaching that text, and a student suddenly, it was the point where the water was closing in over the Egyptians, and I remember a student put up his hand and says, "Hey," he just said at a moment of insight, "This is really unfair."
Yes, I mean that's actually when you read the story, there's lots of cruelty and you could even say the spirit of revenge there, but then you always have to remember that actually this moment of liberation, which is obviously the moment of great joy, is in a way bought with a price, and the Jews don't forget about the price. So it is not just a purely joyful holiday. As we say, we shed the drops of wine, which means that we also shed the tears for the victims of the whole process.
And of course, what your explanation has drawn out is that it's this annual celebration that actually keeps the memory alive and forms the people who hold the memory.
It is in a way paradoxical that this is a annual, there is a cyclical holiday, which reminds us that we are no longer a part of the natural cycle, that we live in a history which has one beginning and one end. And the events never repeat themselves in the history.
And that's the perfect moment for us to stop.
Thank you.
I hope that this short video has helped you to appreciate the riches of what Jewish people celebrating Pesach are thinking about, and I hope it has given you an insight into the sacred calendar of one people. From the University of Nottingham and Professor Agata Bielik-Robson, our Professor of Jewish Studies, goodbye.